I've been following the Long Island serial killer case since 2010 when I participated in an A&E documentary called The Killing Season. Then, a grim picture emerged as the alleged artist, Rex Heuermann, was identified as the killer. Now, there are 2 additional victims who are added to his list, and we're learning more about the depth of this serial killer's brutality. Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, where we dive into crime and criminal acts. Now, if you enjoy our content, please share it with your friends and your contacts. Hey, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis and updates on the latest cases. Now, let's explore the dark corners of criminal behavior together. You know, in the latest search of Rex Heuermann's home, investigators uncovered a critical document titled HK 2002 to 2004, which appears to be a meticulous planning document related to the murders. Now, I've got it here on the side, and I'm going to kind of let it scroll through, but you can download this thing online and read this thing word for word. The document was found on a hard drive in Heuermann's home and included details such as problems, supplies, DS, which likely refers to dump sites or what I call disposal sites, and TRG, which law enforcement's assuming means targets of some kind. Now, when we think about victim selection, those would be the TRGs in this particular document, I believe. The document gives us some insight into this predator's mindset, his level of experience, and his organizational level as a killer. I joined my colleague, retired special agent from the FBI, Bobby Chacon, on Court TV to speak with Vinnie Politan about this case. Now, Vinnie asked me about the possibility that Rex Heuermann could be living 2 separate lives. You know what? You probably have comments of your own on this, but I shared these comments along with sharing some thoughts that I have on how he was evolving as a serial predator. Now listen closely as I talk about how the document suggests that he was actually learning from his mistakes, how he was perfecting his craft of being evil, one victim at a time.
With us tonight, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. Also joining us, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, and the author of the book Deceived, all those proceeds going to a great, great cause to help victims. Mike King is with us. All right, great to see you guys tonight. Mike King, I know you've been looking through all of this information. To me, and we obviously saw it, and we've spoken with the daughter of the BTK, but to have like a wife, children living in a house, and the house being the place where you are bringing these victims, doing horrific things to them, torturing them, then ending their lives and figuring out how to dispose of them, as he writes in some of these books, these papers allegedly. What are your thoughts about that combination, that dual life that is being alleged here?
You know, we talk about this a lot, Vinny, about this difference between the public life and then the secret life that we're seeing in this particular case. And if this is the guy, and if he's the killer, it makes perfect sense. I really agree with Bobby's assessment, because I think this guy was evolving. And I think those court documents are showing us a little bit about his personality as he learns. What he's done is he's recognized he's making some mistakes. He's being seen on maybe CCTV cameras, or he's in a place that he hasn't properly surveilled, or he's dumping pieces or parts in dumpsters that he hasn't appropriately surveilled and made sure that they're going to be safe for him to do that. So he's creating a checklist to say, hey, don't make this mistake again. And it all is just a perfect evolution to start committing these crimes at home, because as he takes on more risk,
if he has multiple victims, if somebody happens to stumble across him when he happens to be dumping a body or something like that, he's going to say, where am I going to be the safest? And you're absolutely right. This guy doesn't want to be caught. This document becomes this fantasy-filled trophy, not taking something from the victim necessarily, although we may learn about it, but that in itself is this document of a trophy that he can go back and relive as he reads through his memoir. So this is really something to see this thing unfolding, because it tells us about his personality, it tells us about his victim selection process, it tells him why he has to evolve and start doing the things that he does downstream as this thing progresses.
You know, I'd also like you to pay attention to why I think that he eventually started committing these murders inside of his home rather than out in some secluded area. To me, it was all about risk reduction. This idea that even predators want to minimize the chances that they'd be seen by somebody with the victim or dumping a body where it was later discovered. Or with CCTV nowadays, even that he was captured on CTV. So let's listen. Well, hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and did you know that you could go to Amazon and send us a gift card as a donation that we can use in purchasing equipment, or frankly for buying a Diet Dr. Pepper? All you need to do when you log into your Amazon account is go up and type in Amazon gift card. When you're there, you'll notice that there's an opportunity to go down and just click on the Amazon gift card and put any amount that you'd like in here for us. For instance, I'm going to send myself a $5 gift card, but I'm going to send it to profilingevil@gmail.com. I'm going to send it from me, and this is a gift card. Then once you're done, all you got to do is say, hey, I like it, and hit buy now. And it'll send off the gift card. I'll receive it and enjoy whatever that little kind gift is that you give. Thanks so much for considering this. Well, I think this is probably a great time to share two maps that I've created that capitalize on this notion that Heuermann, who is just an alleged killer at this point, folks, he's not convicted. So please keep in mind, and I don't think you need reminding, but let's continue to embrace the hallmark of the U.S. criminal justice system that reminds us this guy is innocent until he's proven guilty. But I'll tell you, if the evidence remains consistently factual, he's got a major hill to climb here. But first, let's take a look at the map that I've created on the disappearance of Jessica Taylor. She disappeared on July 26th of 2003. Man, that's 21 years ago. Now, she was last seen in Midtown Manhattan, and the court documents that have been released place Heuermann in the same area at the same time. Remember, he worked down in that area of Midtown. This is a fairly early crime series, and this thing happened 7 years earlier than the disappearance of the Gilgo Four. But the case of Jessica Taylor is also really interesting to me because of the way her body was discovered in two different locations. She was recovered in part on Gilgo Beach with other body parts where she was first discovered up further east in Manorville, New York. Now, this is kind of interesting. The total distance from where Taylor was last seen to the location in Manorville is nearly a 2-hour drive in good conditions. So to put this in perspective of Rex Heuermann's home, it would have taken an hour to get from the city to Manorville, or to Rex Heuermann's home, and then another hour to get to Manorville, east of his home. Now, Jessica Taylor's other body parts were recovered on Gilgo Beach near the Gilgo Four, and that was only about 20 minutes south of Heuermann's home. Now I want to pop up another map here that I created on the Costillo victim, who disappeared in September of 2010, September 2nd. Now, she was last seen at her home in North Babylon, and this place happens to be only 15 minutes from Heuermann's home. Now, her mutilated body was recovered on Gilgo Beach, some 20 minutes south of her home. And it brings up an interesting question about where the actual murder might have occurred. Now, it's possible, although there's nothing at this point to suggest my comment here is factual, that Costillo met the killer at Gilgo Beach where the murder occurred and where her body was disposed of. But that would mean the killer would have had to have been in an area where he could have possibly been seen by somebody, and that increases the killer's risk of being identified. So we've got to keep in mind that the actual murder could have happened in a number of places, including this predator's home. But this is a great time to remind you of a simple investigative principle in these serial predator cases. So let's quickly chat about crime scene locations in the context of the Long Island serial killer case. This one particularly involving Rex Heuermann, the alleged killer. Understanding that there are three distinct types of crime scenes that can help provide insight into the predator's methods, and it can provide insight into the entire investigative process. So first I want to talk about the initial contact site. Now, the initial contact site is where the perpetrator and the victim come into contact with each other. In this case, the victims were primarily sex workers, and they were often contacted through online advertisements, although some actually were out on the street. Now, it's possible in some of the cases, like that of Jessica Taylor, that the actual contact was on the streets of Midtown Manhattan, near his offices and the place in which she was last seen. Now, the initial contact site is crucial as it can reveal how the perpetrator selected and approached the victims, how they remained anonymous for so many years. Investigators found that Heuermann also was using burner phones to communicate with his victims. He'd arrange meetings under the guise of being a client. This careful victim selection process and the locations it happened are really important as we think about the different crime scenes. And frankly, the use of these disposable phones indicated that there's premeditation, in this case on Heuermann's part, if in fact he's proven to be the killer. The second crime scene is the actual crime scene, or the place where the violation of criminal law takes place. In this case, the murder takes place. Now, it could include the sexual assaults and the murder, or the kidnapping and murder. But this scene is where the perpetrator commits the physical act of violence or breaks the criminal code and those elements of the crime. Here is where we usually see DNA, blood spatter, or other kinds of forensic material typically found in these kinds of locations. And in the case against Heuermann, the specific location of the murders remains unclear, but it's looking more and more like it could have happened at his home. But it's clear he took extensive measures to ensure that minimal evidence was left behind. And that comes out in his planning document, that document HK 2002-04. It detailed various tools, cleaning agents, things to manage the crime scene, emphasizing the need to avoid leaving DNA, tire marks, and other pieces of evidence that could lead him to the murders. Now, the third place, or the third crime scene, is the disposal site, the place where the perpetrator actually disposes of the victim's body. Now, in the Long Island serial case, bodies were found along a stretch of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, and these sites were chosen for their remote nature, maybe even for the ease of being able to dump them outside of the vehicle. But it was done so that it was less likely that those things would be discovered, and there were things done that would make it more difficult to investigate this. Now remember, that document talked about DS, dump sites, suggesting that he picked these places strategically to further hinder the identification and the investigation. The bodies were often dismembered, and identifying marks like tattoos were removed or cut up so badly that you couldn't use them to identify who the victims were. These crime scenes, the initial contact site, the crime scene or the place where the crime occurred, and the disposal site each play a critical role in understanding the predator's methodologies. Now, in the case of Rex Heuermann, the evidence recovered in his home and the detailed planning document that was providing this chilling insight into how he must have meticulously planned and executed these crimes is going to play a huge role in his prosecution. It's clear that the document was built to evade detection, and the things that he outlined that he would do to his victims certainly prolonged the suffering that those victims endured, including the long-term suffering that the families have gone through, including those phone calls where he taunted family members. So think about the document released under the latest charges. I mean, there were key items listed under supplies, things like ropes and bring a heavy rope, tarps, tape, medical gloves, various cleaning agents. The document also detailed steps to prepare the body, such as washing the body to get rid of any evidence, removing identifying marks like tattoos, removing the head and hands so that there was no identification. The document also had instructions for disposing of the tools that he would use, clothing, getting new tires, anything that would tie him to that particular victim. Additionally, that document contained personal notes emphasizing the importance of this killer getting adequate rest before committing the crimes, and strategies for improving the efficiency and the effectiveness of the murders, how to more quickly gain control of that victim. The document, along with other seized evidence like the burner phones, the digital records, all of these significantly strengthen the case against Rex Heuermann, showcasing his methodical planning and his execution of these crimes. So let me just remind you of a few important things in this case, starting with the accused suspect, Rex Heuermann. And I doubt there are many of you out there that are hearing this for the first time, but Heuermann was a New York City architect. He's accused of being the Long Island serial killer, and today he's now responsible, according to the state, for at least 6 murders. Now, there are 11 or 12 bodies out there that people are pointing toward him being responsible for. I don't think that it's going to shake out that he's responsible for all those bodies there. Instead of being a serial killer location, it might actually be just a location that was good for dumping bodies. Now the Long Island serial killer, who's also known as the Gilgo Beach Killer, is believed to have murdered other people. His preferential victim, though, this is the important part to me, was smaller women, and in many cases he selected vulnerable sex workers that he could somehow convince to leave their places of safety to meet up with him and engage in this kind of content. Now, several key pieces of evidence have been critical in building this case against Rex Heuermann so far, and it includes things like the cell phone data or the DNA data. Investigators were able to link Heuermann to burner phones that were used to contact victims and victim families. These phones were traced back to locations near Heuermann's home and near his workplace in Midtown, suggesting his involvement with the communications and the communications with those victims. DNA analysis is playing a crucial role in this case already, as authorities have already matched DNA found from a hair on one of the victims' bodies back to Heuermann. Now, there are a few witnesses who have provided descriptions of a suspect, the ogre that match Heuermann's appearance. They describe him as a tall guy, and this aligns with his stature. The state reportedly also has forensic and technological evidence on their side as they take this case against Rex Heuermann. Heuermann's been accused of murdering 6 women connected to the Long Island serial case. And I want to just kind of shout out who they are while we talk about this case. Now, I think I have these ordered in oldest to newest, but there may be some mistakes here. First is 24-year-old Valerie Mack, also known as Melissa Taylor. She disappeared back in 2000. Now, she was a sex worker from the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, making her way up to New York. Number 2, 20-year-old Jessica Taylor, who we featured in this particular episode. She disappeared in July of 2003, 21 years ago. She was a sex worker from Manhattan, New York. Number 3 is 25-year-old Maureen Brainard-Barnes, who disappeared in July of 2007. She was a sex worker from Norwich, Connecticut. She was last seen in New York City, though, where she'd gone to meet a client. Then there's 24-year-old Melissa Barthelemy, who disappeared in July of 2009. Melissa was a sex worker from Erie County, New York, but she was last seen in the Bronx in New York City. Then there's 22-year-old Megan Waterman. She disappeared in June of 2010. She too was a sex worker from Scarborough, Maine, and she was last seen leaving a hotel in that area. And finally, 27-year-old Amber Costello, who disappeared in September of 2010. She too was a sex worker from North Babylon, New York, and she was last seen leaving her home to meet a client. You know, Vinnie Politan asked Bobby Chacon and me if we thought there would be more charges against Rex Heuermann. So let's catch those comments, and please make sure you're adding your own comments down below.
Now, we don't have a ton of time tonight, so I want to go to each of you on this. How many, do you think there are any victims before 1993? Because that's the earliest one that we have right now. Each of you about 20 seconds each. Bobby?
I do. I definitely think there were more victims prior to 93. I mean, if you look at his age and his profile and the amount of murders that he did, I would suspect there's more bodies in more areas other than Long Island.
Wow. That's right, because there are some connections to South Carolina as well. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Absolutely. I mean, the evolution teaches us that he's getting better at what he does, and he's getting a whole lot better at being a whole lot bad.
All right, Bobby Chacon, Mike King, I know our time is short tonight because we have a lot to get to this hour, but we appreciate your insight.
Well, thanks for watching, folks, and remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And don't forget about Profiling Evil's audio podcasts. You can get them on your favorite podcast platform. And please think about signing up for Profiling Evil's digital newsletter, the BOLO. BOLO stands for Be on the Lookout, and the only way you're going to get the digital newsletter is by signing up on our website. And you can do that at profilingevil.com. Hey, and again, please consider donating to Profiling Evil. When you do so, and you do so through PayPal, it ensures that we receive more of your donation for the work that we're trying to do. So please know your donations are deeply appreciated, and they help us continue to roll out what I hope you think is quality content. And it helps us pay the bills. So thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.